ॐ भूर्भुवः स्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात्। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. Namaste my dear friends. This is second video on Vedas and Upanishads. In this part, I am going to describe the Upanishads. Now, about the number and divisions of the Upanishads. With the disappearance of many of the recessions of the Vedas, many Brahmanas, Arnyakas, and Upanishads also disappeared. The Rig Veda is said to have existed in 21 recessions, the Yajur Veda in 100, the Sama Veda in 1000, and the Athar Veda in 9. But there are differences of opinion among the authorities on this subject. The fact that the sacred books were not committed to writing in ancient times is partly responsible for this lamentable loss. Furthermore, among the works surviving, it is difficult to ascertain the exact number that should be regarded as authentic Upanishads. A religious system is considered valid in India only when it is supported by Shruti, the Vedas. Hence, the founders of religious sects have sometimes written books and called them Upanishads in order to give their views scriptural authority. The Allah Upanishad, for instance, was composed in the 16th century at the time of the Muslim Emperor Akbar. 108 Upanishads are enumerated in the Muktika Upanishad, which is work belonging to the tradition of the Yajur Veda. Among these, the Aitreya Upanishad and Kaustikeya Upanishad belong to the Rig Veda, the Chandogya and Kena Upanishad to the Sam Veda, the Taittiriya, Mahanarayana, Katha, Svetavsara and Maitrayani to the Black Yajur Veda, the Isha and Brihadaranyaka to the White Yajur Veda, and the Mundaka, Prashna and Mandukya to the Atharva Veda. It may be stated also that these Upanishads belong to differing recessions of their respective Vedas. Thus, for instance, the Mundaka Upanishad belongs to the Sonaka recension of the Atharva Veda, while the Prashna Upanishad belongs to the Piplada recension. The Brahma Sutras, which is the most authoritative work on the Vedanta philosophy, has been based upon the Aitreya, Taittiriya, Chandogya, Brihadaranyaka, Kaustiki, Katha Upanishad, Svetavsara, Svetasvatara, Mundaka, Prashna, and possibly also the Jabala Upanishad. Shankaracharya wrote his celebrated commentaries on Isa, Kena, Katha, Prashna, Mundaka, Mandukya, Aitreya, Taittiriya, Chandogya, Brihadaranyaka, and possibly also the Svetavsvatara Upanishad. These are regarded as the major works. The teachings of the Upanishads, the Brahma Sutras, and the Bhagavad Gita constitute Vedanta. Three main schools of Vedanta exist: the dualist, qualified, non-dualist, and non-dualist, their principal teachers being respectively Madhvacharya AD 1199 to 1276, Ramanujacharya AD 1017 to 1137, and Sankaracharya AD 788 to 820. Madhvacharya has written commentaries on some of the major Upanishads according to dualist doctrines. Some of the disciples and followers of Ramanujacharya have done likewise to prove that qualified non-dualism is the underlying philosophy of Vedanta, but neither of these systems has won such wide acceptance and prestige as that of the Sankaracharya. Sankaracharya's interpretation of the Upanishads, Bhagavad Gita, and Brahma Sutras is the supreme Hindu contribution to the philosophical wisdom of the world. This remarkable genius appeared at a critical period of Indian history. The sun of Buddhism had already passed below the horizon. Various invading peoples such as the Sakas, the Tartars, the Baluchis, and the Huns had entered India with their grotesque religious ideas and ceremonies and embraced Buddhism. At their hands, the religion of Buddha had become greatly distorted. A Hindu revival was struggling into existence, and numerous Hindu sects such as the old Vedic ritualists and the yogi ascetics were asserting their contrary yet equally dogmatic views. A veritable Babel was reigning in India when the youthful Sankaracharya appeared on the scene. According to his followers, this great pillar of Hinduism was the perfect embodiment of the Vedic wisdom. Endowed with a keen intellect and with rare forensic powers, he courageously challenged all opponents. He cut through the cobwebs of conflicting views with a direct and consistently rational interpretation of the authoritative text, supported by his own profound spiritual experiences. Within the short span of a lifetime, only 32 years, he traveled the length and breadth of India, preaching his doctrines and performing and reforming the Sannyasin organizations. He founded 4 monasteries at the cardinal points of the country, and meanwhile he produced a body of literary work that includes not only his great Vedantic commentaries but also many hymns addressed to the Hindu deities, through worship of whom the aspirant's heart is purified and his spirit qualified for the knowledge of Brahma. When one considers the lofty heights reached by Sankaracharya in his philosophy, and at the same time the soul-melting love permeating his hymns, one cannot but marvel at the mighty sweep of his mind, the catholicity of his heart, and the austere purity of his intellect. He was indeed a savior of the Hindu world. The subject matter of the Upanishads is abstruse. Unwary students easily become confused by their apparent contradictions. Therefore, from ancient times, the books have been composed to explain and harmonize their mysteries. Among these, the Bhagavad Gita and the Brahma Sutras are the best known. The Gita is compared to the life-giving milk of the great milk cow, which is the Upanishads. Arjuna is the calf and Sri Krishna the milker. Sri Krishna, in his dialogue with Arjuna, presented through the Bhagavad Gita the essence of the Upanishads. The Brahma Sutras, also known as the Vedanta Sutras and Sariraka Sutras, formulates the teachings of the Upanishads in concise aphorisms which reconcile the many apparent contradictions Vyasa is the reputed author of these basic works. They, together with the Upanishads, constitute what are called the three Prasthanas, the canonical books which form the foundation of the religion and philosophy of Vedanta. Side by side with Shruti or the Vedas, there exists another body of scriptural treatises known as Smriti. These works are regarded as having come into existence through human authorship. They derive their authority from the Vedas and include such majestic books as the Mahabharata, the various Puranas, and the Manusmrita. In ancient India, only those people who belonged to the three upper castes were permitted to read the Vedas. The teachings of Smriti, however, were accessible to all, and they too opened the door to liberation. In AD 1650, 50 Upanishads were translated into Persian under the patronage of Prince Dara, the son of Shah Jahan, Emperor of Delhi. From the Persian, they were translated into Latin in AD 1801 to 1802. Schopenhauer read and studied this Latin translation and in later years declared, "In the whole world there is no study so beneficial and so elevating as that of the Upanishads. It has been the solace of my life, it will be the solace of my death." The meaning of Upanishad. The word Upanishad has been derived from the root sad, to which are added two prefixes upa and ni. The prefix upa denotes nearness and ni totality. The root sad means to loosen, to attain, and to annihilate. Thus, the etymological meaning of the word is the knowledge or vidya, which, when received from a competent teacher, loosens totally the bondage of the world or surely enables the pupil to attain, or that is, realize the self, or completely destroys ignorance, which is responsible for the deluding appearance of the infinite self as the finite embodied creature. Though the word primarily signifies knowledge, yet by implication it also refers to the book that contains that knowledge. The root sad, which the prefix of upa also connotes the humility with which the pupil should approach the teacher. The profound knowledge of Brahma has been described in the Bhagavad Gita as the sovereign science. It was considered a profound secret and sometimes given the name of Upanishad. It is to be noted that the instructions regarding Brahma were often given in short formulas, also known as Upanishads. Its secret name Upanishad is Satyasha Satyam, the truth of truth. Now, therefore, the instruction about Brahma, Neti Neti, not this, not this. That Brahma is called Tadvana, the adorable of all. It should be worshipped by the name of Tadvana. The books which contained the above mentioned secret teachings and formulas were also called Upanishads. The qualifications of students. The later Vedanta teachers formulated the qualifications of the pupil entitled entitled to study Vedanta. He must know in a general Vedas and their auxiliaries, must have attained purity of heart by freeing himself from sin through an avoidance of selfish and forbidden actions, as well as by the practice of daily devotions and obligatory duties, particular religious observances on special occasions, and customary penances prescribed by religion. Further, he must discriminate between the real and the unreal and renounce the unreal. He must cultivate inner calmness and control of the senses, preserve the serenity of mind and organs after they have been controlled, acquire such virtues as forbearance and concentration, and lastly be possessed of an intense yearning for liberation from the bondage of worldly life. Such a one and such a one alone is qualified to receive from the teacher the profound knowledge of the Upanishads. The highest mystery of Vedanta, delivered in a previous cycle we read, should not be given to one whose passions have not been completely subdued, nor to one who is not a son or is not a pupil. A father may therefore tell that doctrine of Brahma to his eldest son or to a worthy pupil, but it should not be imparted to anybody else, even if he give the teacher the whole sea-girt earth full of treasure. For this doctrine is worth more than that. Yet, yeah, it is worth more. One must not teach this to any but a son or a pupil. The custodians of the Vedic culture were the members of the Brahmin caste. That's why the Brahmins were held in the highest esteem by every section of Hindu society. Tests by teachers. Aspirants desiring the knowledge of the Upanishads were subjected to severe ordeals by their preceptors. The Katha Upanishad describes the case of Nachiketa, who was tested in various ways by Yama, the god of death, to ascertain his fitness for the knowledge of Brahma. He was offered horses, elephants, and cattle, children and grandchildren, rulership of the earth, and many years of life, heavenly damsels, and their music, and numerous other desirable things which do not fall to the lot of an ordinary mortal. But he spurned them all, understanding their transitory nature, and persisted in his prayer for the knowledge of the self. Pratada, Pratardana was tested by Indra, Jnanasruti, Pautrayana by Raika, Aruni by Parvahana, Janka by Yajnavalkya, and Brihadartha by Sakyana. In the Prashna Upanishad, the teacher Piplada demanded of his 6 disciples that they should spend 1 year practicing austerities, continence, and faith. Afterwards, you may ask me any question you like. If I know the answer, I shall give it to you. The Chandogya Upanishad, in a celebrated passage, tells how the teacher Prajapati required Indra and Virochana to practice spiritual disciplines for 32 years. Even after that, Virochana, the king of the demons who had not acquired the necessary purity of heart, went away satisfied with the erroneous idea that the self was identical with the body, while Indra, the king of the gods, had to continue in the austere life of a brahmachari for another 73 years, 105 in all, before he could realize the true knowledge of the self. Reconciling the teachings of the Upanishads. One finds in the Upanishads various strands of thought: dualism, qualified non-dualism, and non-dualism. Further, the Upanishads describe both the Brahma with the attributes Saguna Brahma and the attributeless Brahma, Nirguna Brahma. They also deal with the disciplines of philosophical knowledge, jnana, divine love, bhakti, action, karma, and yoga. Sometimes contradictions appear, hence, the questions arise as to whether the Upanishads present a single, consistent, coordinated system of knowledge or a mere conglomeration of unrelated ideas. The orthodox Hindu view is that the Upanishads are consistent, that they describe a single truth, namely the reality of the non-dual Brahma, and furthermore that this same truth is rendered in the Bhagavad Gita and the Brahma Sutras. The Vedantic philosophers support this conclusion by certain accepted means of proof. But the Western critics maintain that the Upanishads present inconsistent views and that conflicting doctrines may be found even in the same Upanishads. Such a conclusion, according to the Hindu philosophers, is the natural result of the inability of the Western Orientalists to find the thread of harmony. They place their emphasis on particular details and lack comprehension of the general trend. The subject matter of the Upanishad is Brahma, the absolute which transcends time, space, and causality, and cannot be comprehended by human thought or rendered in words. Human language and reasoning can describe and interpret sense perceived phenomena, but Brahma is beyond their grasp. Any presentation of this subject in finite and relative human terms cannot but contain seeming contradictions. Nevertheless, this does not vitiate the absolute itself. Further, the Hindu philosophers admit different degrees of powers of comprehension on the part of various pupils, and they formulate their instructions accordingly. But such differences do not affect Brahma itself, which is the final object of Upanishad knowledge. According to Shankaracharya, the sole purpose of the Upanishads is to prove the reality of Brahma and the phenomenality or unreality of the universe of names and forms, and to establish the absolute oneness of the embodied soul and Brahma. This Vedic truth is not a product of the human mind and cannot be comprehended by the unaided human intellect. Only a competent teacher through direct experience can reveal to the qualified student the true significance of the Vedas and the fullness of their absolutely consistent truth. The Kshatriya influence. A striking feature of the Upanishads is the part played in them by the Kshatriyas, the members of the royal military caste. This fact has given rise to certain interesting speculations. The mantra and the Brahmana portions of the Vedas treat of sacrifice in which the Brahmins serve as a priest. They deal with ritualistic works in which a diversity of the actor, the instruments of action, and the result is recognized, while the sacrifices themselves are performed with a view to reaping results either here on earth or in the afterworld. This multiplicity of elements and stands in contrast to the central theme of the Upanishads, which is Brahma Vidya, the unitive knowledge of Brahma and the oneness of existence, and to the Vedantic condemnation of sacrifices as barriers to this unitive knowledge. The seeker for the knowledge of Brahma is told the Upanishads that he must renounce his renounce all actions calculated to bring fruits and eschew all desire for happiness either on earth or in heaven. Therefore, several Western writers have contended that the Upanishads represent a protest of the Kshatriyas against the influence of the Brahmins. They contend also that the knowledge of Atma, whatever its origin, was cultivated primarily by the Kshatriyas and accepted by the Brahmins only later on. Hindu scholars, however, do not accept this view. In reviewing the problem, let us first point out a few of the references to Kshatriyas in the Upanishads. One of the most important and ancient of the Upanishads now extant is the Brihadaranyaka, which frequently mentions an emperor of Videha whose name was Janaka. This imposing figure is described as a master of the Vedic knowledge, Adhita Veda, endowed with a keen intellect, Medhavi, and familiar with the doctrines of the Upanishad. It is stated in the third chapter that on a certain occasion, this great emperor performed a sacrifice in which gifts were freely distributed. Vedic scholars from the Kuru and Panchala countries were assembled. The emperor then expressed a desire to know which was the most erudite of these Vedic scholars. And so he had 1,000 cows confined in a pen, and on the horns of each cow were fixed 10 padas of gold. Janaka said to the Brahmins, revered Brahmins, let him who is the best Vedic scholar among you drive home the cows. None of the Brahmins dared to accept the challenge except the sage Yajnavalkya, who asked one of his pupils to lead the cows home. This enraged the others. The chief priest of the court arose and said, are you then the best Vedic scholar among us? Yajnavalkya answered, I bow to the best Vedic scholar, I only want the cows. Thereupon the other Brahmins were determined to test his knowledge of Brahma. A learned debate ensued, and this was presided over by the Kshatriya king. In chapter 4 of the same work, Yajnavalkya and the Emperor Janaka again appear. This time the Kshatriya is the disciple and the Brahmin the preceptor. Janaka receives from Yajnavalkya the supreme knowledge of Brahma and demonstrates his appreciation by making a suitable gift. I give you, sir, the empire of Videha and myself with it to wait upon you. At the conclusion of the fifth chapter, this wise emperor Janaka instructed Budila, the son of Aswastaraswa, concerning the Gayatri, a verse the knowledge of which consumed a man's sins and make him pure, cleansed, and undecaying and immortal. Pravahana Javali, another Kshatriya king, appears in the 8th section of the first chapter of the Chandogya Upanishad, where he is described as teaching the secret of the Udgita discussed in the Samaveda. He appears again in the third section of the fifth chapter of the same Upanishad, where he plays a more important role. In this case, the sage Aruni's son Savetketu is having an interview with the king, and the king asks him if he has been instructed by his father. The youth replies that he has received instruction, whereupon Javali confounds him by asking a number of questions regarding a man's departure from this world, his return, the ways of the gods, the ways of the fathers, and the rebirth of the soul. When Ketu confesses that he does not know the answers, the king inquires, "Then why did you say that you had been instructed?" How could anybody who did not know these things say that he had been instructed? Ketu returned to his father sorrowfully and described to him what had taken place. Then Aruni went to the king, who said to him, "Sir, ask as a boon such things as men possess." The Brahmin said to him, "May such things as men possess remain with you. Repeat to me those words which you addressed to my boy." The king was disturbed. He said to Aruni, "Remain with me for some time." Then he added, "As to what you have just asked of me, sir, this knowledge has not gone to any Brahmin before you. That's why in ancient times all over the world the Kshatriyas were the sole instructors in this knowledge. Finally, the king gave instruction to his Brahmin disciple in what is known as the knowledge of the five fires, which deals with the soul's rebirth following death. This had hitherto been a secret confined to the Kshatriyas. He who acquired this knowledge, said the king, was not defiled by association with vile persons. He remained pure and clean and would gain the world of the blessed. Section 2 of the 6th chapter of Brihadaranyaka Upanishad also tells of the teaching of the knowledge of the five fires by Pravahana Javali to Aruni, and in the Kaushitaki Upanishad chapter 1 we read that the Kshatriya king Chitra belonged to the line of Garga, imparted the same knowledge to the same Brahmin says. Let us now return to the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad in chapter 2, section 1. The Kshatriya king of Banaras, Ajatasatru, was approached by the proud Brahmin Balaki, who said, "I will tell you about Brahma." The king begged him to go on. Balaki described the attributes of Brahma as reflected in such objects as the sun, the moon, lightning, akasa, the wind, fire, water, and a mirror. "Is this all?" Ajatasattu asked. "This is all. By knowing this much one cannot know Brahma," said the king. The Brahmin was humbled. "I approach you as a student," he said. "It is contrary to usage," said the king, "that a Brahmin should approach a Kshatriya with the thought that the latter might teach him about Brahma. However, I shall instruct you." Then the Kshatriya Ajatasattu taught the Brahmin Balaki the oneness of Jiva and Brahma by explaining the three states of waking, dream, and the deep sleep. This story is repeated in the Kaushitaki Upanishad chapter 4. In the Chandogya Upanishad 5th chapter section 11, the story is told of a five great Brahmin householders, all well versed in the Vedas, and another erudite Brahmin, Aruni, who came to the Kshatriya king Kekai Asopati for the knowledge of Vaishnavara Atma, the universal self. When they arrived, the king showed respect to them separately, and next morning said to his honored guest, "In my kingdom there is no thief, no miser, no drunkard, no Brahmin without a sacrificial altar in his house, no ignorant person, and no adulterer, not to speak of adulteresy. Sirs, I am about to perform a sacrifice. Please remain with me, and I shall bestow on each of you as much wealth as I should give to a priest." They answered, "A man should state the purpose for which he has come. At the present time, you are the one who possess the knowledge of the Vaishnavara Atma. Please give us instruction." Tomorrow, said the king, I shall give you my reply. Next morning, the Brahmins approached him like disciples carrying fuel in their hands and received the instruction for which they had come. One more illustration. It is told in the seventh chapter of the Chandogya Upanishad that Narada once came to the Akshatriya Sanat Kumara and humbly begged him for instruction. Sanat Kumara said, please tell me what you know, after that I shall tell you what is beyond. The learned Narada enumerated the subjects that he had studied. These included, among others, the Vedas, mythology, grammar, the science of numbers, the rules of sacrifice for the ancestors, the science of portents, logic, ethics, etymology, the science of pronunciation and prosody, the science of demons, the science of weapons, astronomy, the science of serpents, and the science of perfume making, dancing, and singing. But, sir, for all of this, concluded Narada, I know only the mantras, the sacred words, and not the self. I have been told by such men as yourself that he who knows the self overcomes grief. I am in grief. Good sir, assist me beyond this grief. Thereupon Sanat Kumara began to lead Narada step by step to the knowledge of Brahma. Sanat Kumara said, where one sees nothing else, hears nothing else, understands nothing else, that is the infinite. Whereas one sees something else, hears something else, understands something else, that is the finite. The infinite is immortal, the finite mortal. The infinite continued, the king is indeed below, above, behind, before, to the right, and to the left. It is indeed all this. Thus it was that the venerable Sanat Kumara revealed to Narada, when the impurities of his heart had been removed, that which lies beyond darkness. It up it is apparent from all of this, and this is not by any means an exhaustive list of possible citations, that the Kshatriyas exerted a profound influence on the teachings and the teachers of the Upanishads. They were versed in rituals, in the mysteries of rebirth, in the identity of Jiva and Brahma, and in the knowledge of the infinite, which is the culmination of the spiritual wisdom of Indo-Aryans. This, as we have said, has led certain eminent Vedic scholars of the West to conclude that Upanishads containing the knowledge of the self must be a later development by the Kshatriyas in reaction against the rituals and sacrifices of the mantra and Brahmana portions of the Vedas. The Brahmins, occupied solely with the details and paraphernalia of sacrifices, were ignorant of the philosophy of the self, and so had to learn self-knowledge from the teachers of the military caste. Such a conclusion, however, is hardly valid. It is true indeed that according to Advaita Vedanta, the knowledge of Brahma and the performance of sacrifices cannot coexist. They are incompatible. He who has realized the oneness of Jiva and Brahma and the unreality of a relative world cannot participate in Vedic sacrifices, the aim of which is to enable the performer to enjoy happiness in heavens. However, and this is the great point, sacrifices and knowledge of Brahma are meant for two different classes of aspirants. A sannyasi who has experienced the transitory nature of enjoyments is qualified for self-knowledge, but such enlightened ones do not constitute the major portion of society. It is the duty of others who belong to the first three stages of life, who identify themselves with the body and mind and seek material happiness, to engage in sacrificial action. This is a basic principle understood and taken for granted by every member of Hindu society. It is neither necessary nor granted by every member of Hindu society. It is neither necessary nor possible for a sannyasin to perform sacrifices. To suppose that there were among the Brahmins no sannyasins who were endowed with self-knowledge would be wrong. The fact is that as there were both illumined and unillumined persons among the Kshatriyas, so there were among the Brahmins those who were devoted to sacrifices and also those who cultivated the knowledge of Brahma. The passages of the Upanishads that condemn sacrifices and other actions cannot possibly apply to the performers of sacrifices, for they are all still householders. Such passages were directed to and cannot apply to sannyasis alone. As already stated, according to the Vedic tradition, the Lord alone is the source of the Vedic knowledge. He is indeed the embodiment of that knowledge. At the beginning of his cycle, he revealed it for the protection of creation, making it known through the pure hearts of the rishis. Rishis, according to the Vedas, are highly spiritual beings who attained perfection in previous cycles but have assumed human bodies in the new creation to become divine instruments for the propagation of the wisdom of the Vedas. Kapila, Vyasa, and Vasishtha belong to this number. Then, as time goes on, the Vedic knowledge is disseminated through a succession of competent teachers. The Brihadaranyaka Upanishad supplies several genealogical tables of such Vedic seers. There were a number of Kshatriyas among the rishis, and the Brahmins, eager to acquire their knowledge, accepted discipleship under them in accordance with the well-known Hindu maxim that a superior knowledge should be learned even from a person of inferior rank. So I end this video here, and the next video on the same Vedic and Upanishadic knowledge continue in the third video also. The third video will start with the Vedic knowledge. So thank you, my dear friends. Please like, comment and share the video and subscribe the channel. Thanks a lot. Namaskar.